Hey guys, JT here, and today we're not doing a Let's Play. We're exploring an ARG known as the Pendog Creative Library. Now, a little bit about this ARG. Go to the About Us page. In real life, this is made by With Kinder Eyes, and I will link her channel and all of that stuff in the description if YouTube will let me, because it's not spam, it's just me trying to support a content creator, YouTube. But over here in story, Penny M is the one who is behind the Pendle Creative Archive. And she made this because she wanted to document old cartoons and pop cartoons that are no longer around or have lost media to them. And along the way, strange things happen that involve these characters. And we're going to explore some of this strange stuff because this update talks about somebody named Jane Perel and what she is up to. This isn't the new stuff, guys. This is the old stuff, but I want to get to it before getting to the new stuff. So, who is Jane here? Let's read the article and find out. This article is dedicated to a very obscure, complicated, and troubled individual, so take heed before reading. Already off to a pretty positive start. We are traveling into an unhappy history with an unsatisfactory ending. With that in mind, let's discuss Jane Perel, digital illustrator, enthusiast for old cartoons, and intense horror fan. Most of what we can learn about Jane Perel is sourced from accounts of friends, acquaintances, and those affected by her. We have fairly little info relayed from her own mouth, and her family has been, well, we did think it would be right to contact them, nor do we think the information they might have on Jane would be truthful. Again, something interesting to know. I apologize. I know I don't mean to interrupt the reading here, but things to maybe write down. Jane Preel. I'm sorry if I'm butchering her last name. Pendall Creative Team. Drew from a young age, but was never upfront with when she got hooked on the idea of cartoons. That said, a large body of her memorable work was released following the young woman's 20th birthday. From her earliest drawings, one could see heavy focus on rubber hose style cartoons, body horror, and grasping crowds of hands. She described herself as loving to cram as many details in her artwork as possible. She would draw in this style for about 3 years, posting her art periodically and slowly connecting with other artists she met online. The art she made was an expression of her love of abstract horror, and she felt that cartoons could be used for so much more in the genre than what they typically were. She would often write long, rambling threads about her desire for a slasher movie that starred a cartoon front and center as the antagonist. Around the final years of her artistic career, Jane would shift her art style into 50s inspired UPA cartoon aesthetics. She mentioned being burnt out, and perhaps this was an attempt to do something new with her art and find creative enrichment through different art styles. The work she put out during this time was equally surreal and abstract, but with a meaner and more violent edge to it. Jane was a very troubled individual, graduating university during quarantine and returning to what she described as to friends as a stifling, awful suburban family home. She would become increasingly dependent on online communities for attention and human interaction. It was clear that the artist felt alone in her home, regularly preparing for the inevitability of homelessness or being forced into a group home by other family members. Her desire for connection led into a habit of clinging to other artists she admired online, immediately assuming them to be friends and getting extremely possessive and angry when she felt she was being abandoned for other relationships. Perhaps due to the stress and despair of her situation, she felt trapped and doomed. Regardless, she could be extremely difficult to be around, and had a habit of lashing out verbally at those around her. After years of building goodwill online, it all exploded in the year of 2023. She began to slot away acquaintances and friends. It was an event I myself was vaguely aware of, but this was mainly through gossip and secondhand information from friends. During this time, her most violent and bleak art would be made, with her infamous character, the Slishy Slasher, featured amongst the most troubling of them. A big part and controversy of her new art was that it featured her cartoon killer slaughtering inanimate puppets. It was something that scared off a lot of people, but when questioned about it, she had multiple explanations behind the meaning of her art. According to her, she felt like a puppet in her household, as an autistic person who had let her life be written out for her and forced to play a specific role. The art was stated to be an expression of self-harm, hoping for someone to cut her strings, but on another account she stated it to be a manifestation of her borderline personality disorder, a killer of relationships. Both are probably true. Regardless, she would sink deeper away from online spaces until she went missing. Nothing has been posted from her since. No matter how troubled of a person she might be, she could be deeply unpleasant and had an aversion to responsibility. But some pity is earned, I think. As someone who pities her, I think I am obligated to archive her work as an artist. We can only speculate on what could have been if she just worked on herself more. Months ago, someone sent me a link her series of artwork surrounding a conceptual book called The Stars in Blue. A book that would have explored more of Slishy Slasher's history, perhaps reflect a more tender and remorseful side of Jane as she worked to give her character a happy ending. I have been working with several art friends in order to restore this book in the form of a collaborative project in which everyone in the group draws a page described by Jane in the note she left behind. And this right here is from the Halloween update. And what it's talking about is how Jane's wearing a new her old costume. And she doesn't seem too happy about it. Because something that's not mentioned here is that she is a trans boy to girl. She's transitioned from boy to girl. Sorry if I said that kind of wrong. Something else about Jane is that her page has some secrets. Like, for example, clicking on her face coming. Clicking on her face coming to this. And this over here that can be deciphered. So, member evaluation, COA Chapter 11. James instead of Jane. I got a bad feeling about you guys because you're already getting their name wrong. That's a dead name. Hello? It's Jane. But according to them, it is with great pleasure that I write to you on behalf of one James Perel. Having joined our organization several months ago, James was brought on by myself during his time of duress and lacking monetary or political prospects. Was placed in the kitchen. However, James would go on to prove a very lively and radical personality amongst the staff. He has shown himself to have a way with words. His speech emerges with when in conditions when he is shown receptacle socialization. I believe James' talents are wasted here in that, given the proper education, he could be a valuable asset towards the organization. He has shown a willingness to mold his personality and ideas to keep the camaraderie of his fellow organization members and an intense prospect towards getting others to follow his lead. An example As an example, our members are not allowed to have art supplies nor writing materials. James has managed to obtain them several times through his influence with fellow members despite our strictest preventable conditions. At times, our members may break the rules and even bend them. Standard procedures calls for discipline, and although James has indeed been disciplined for each instant, these recurring manipulations are what tipped me off to his potential. I call for your benevolence and mercy on James' behalf. Prone to fixating on people and ideas, however, I believe this abnormality can be redirected towards our long term goals. Former transgender individual might regress should our broader goals interfere with lingering subtendability. However, as mentioned above, James has shown himself to do near anything in the pursuit of feeling like he belongs, would likely keep rank in order to avoid social exile. His creative writing and the art he draws is a habit we must prune out of him, especially that awful character that he draws in every spare moment. Maybe I am a snowflake, but I felt kind of dirty reading that because it's an organization, a cult, spoiler alert, saying, yeah, we want to change this person. Because, why not? Oh, they want to be a girl now instead of a boy? Too bad. Let's change that. Come on, Jane. Or James. Yeah, no, no. I can't bring myself to call Jane James. But yeah, that's. Speaking of that character, Slishy Slasher. Jane Burrell's infamous character, the Slishy Slasher, would feature in several of her later works and was typically depicted in abstract nightmarish landscapes, either being tormented by them or being the perpetrator of the events within them. Excuse me, I have the hiccups, because, of course. Not much can be said about the Slishy Slasher's backstory or history, as what we know comes from rumor, gossip, and vague accounts of Perel's own words. The Slishy Slasher was a manifestation or metaphor for her borderline personality disorder and her struggles with it. But what the character's motivations were, what her end goals were, and the past she endured are unknown. However, with the current work on the restoration of the Stars and Blue storybook, based on the notes left behind by Jane, this character's history should hopefully be revealed in time. Yeah, I want to mention that too. Stars and Blue is something you can read right now. I know in pendog lore that's not possible. It hasn't been completed, but it can be read, and I will have a link to it in the description if I remember. And I will try to. Past JT or future JT getting ready to upload this video, do not forget. So for some reason, press the read now thing and it will take you to it. Also, that is Doodle McNoodle, and she's amazing. Anyway, where were we? The Slishy Slasher was often depicted by Jane as a murderous tall woman with an abstract swarm of arms at her employ that she would use to chop up puppets, people, and ideas while grinning a scarlet smile. She was depicted doing this in a very casual way. Her human arms typically stuffed in her pockets and herself leaning to the side while her additional arms went to work chopping and slicing away with straight razors. However, in her later work, this murderous agenda would be changed into something a bit more abstract, cutting the ribbons of people and breaking them apart. This could have been a more elegant metaphor for destroying relationships via cutting the red thread of destiny. Based on the notes we have recovered from Jane's digital footprint, we can discern the slasher was a deeply unhappy and jealous individual. Her early drawings of the character would have them demanding people to look at them and muttering jealous bile and insults at her targets. It's no wonder that people took the drawings personally and ostracized the artist. However, I can't help but feel that, messy and poorly explained as they were, these words were not directed at anyone but Jane herself. A portrayal of how she perceived BPD was manifesting within herself. Simply put, the Slishy Slasher was a hateful depiction of the self from an extremely self loathing individual that eventually became a self fulfilling destiny. In later illustrations, planned or completed, and written notes, the character was described as eventually finding something other than the life she currently lived, which is very interesting to think about. This definitely matches what I've read of the Stars and Blue storybook, a work planned but never completed by Jane Perrell, which I am working with other artists to complete. In the draft of the book, the slasher was described as eventually falling into another world. Her story switching from horror, loneliness, and digging down to community, restorative justice, and mental wellness. An interesting character, not as famous or well known, but definitely not popular as the other characters hosted on our archive, but one I thought our readers would appreciate learning about. And we're going to learn more about Slishy. Oh, yes, we are. But to round this out, I do want to show some of the stuff. I won't read it, um, but some of what's here. Those arms. She's got multiple arms cutting things up. We'll get to you in a second. This is one of the illustrations from the Stars in Blue, as well as this, I believe. It's also just a general really nice art. Like I know it looks kind of grim, but I do like how it overall looks. And then this is the latest one, and again it's from the Stars in Blue. You will find this photo. And just for some clarification, guys, while the Stars in Blue is canon to the Pendle Creative Library story, it's not canon in the way that it's like good. You're gonna get the answers on hints here, as far as I know. It's two separate things. Well, the Stars in Blue book. How do I word this? It's canon to this, but it's not completed. In over on the Stars in Blue, it's completed, and it won't give you all the answers to the Pendog archive, but it will get you to see a different side of Slishy Slasher. Although, if you really want that, hold on. I know you're a hidden link. Take me to you. All right. Well, this is JT signing out. See you guys next time, and I will get to that hidden link next time. Peace.